Let's jump right in. So you have
Okay.
pairings, most important part of this whole conversation. No, but really, let's talk watch charts. So you have watch charts. Maybe I reached out to you because I was trying to buy it. Because originally I was trying to arbitrage Rolexes, and then I realized I don't know shit about this world.
Right,
Uh,
right.
can you give me like ballpark, like how's the site doing? Where's it at right now? Just numbers, how long you've been working on it, some of the stats, whatever you can share.
Yeah, sure. So I launched the site. Actually, I registered the domain January 1st, 2019. So it's been about a year and 3 months that I've been actually working on it now. I first launched it. I was doing a lot of backend stuff. The first couple months, launched it around March of 2019. So the
Oh
site's been
wow,
live for about a year. Yeah. So it's pretty
wow.
new.
But yeah, your traffic looks
Um,
insane. What's your monthly traffic at?
so right now we're doing about 200,000 to 250,000 visitors a month, and then maybe around 5 to 600,000 page views.
Dude, not bad. Is that
Yeah,
mostly SEO driven, or how are people finding out about
yeah,
you?
it's mostly SEO driven. I think about 90% of the incoming traffic is from search, um, and yeah, the growth's just so far been pretty. I've been pretty happy with it. I remember like in May of last year is when we first started getting a little bit of traffic, and then getting like 100 visitors a day. And then it's just been continually growing. I think a lot of it is just the fact that we have so much data, and so you know, it's there's a lot of hits that on obscure watches or different types of watches
Hmm.
that then show up, get indexed by Google, and then people show up on the website for that. But then also just having all this pricing data that's aggregated right between all these models is really, I think, something unique and something that is normally only reserved for sort of dealers to look at, right? Like this
Totally.
is not something that regular watch consumers usually have access to. And that's really where the idea of the website sort of uh,
Yeah.
came to be is, as an individual collector myself, I noticed that, it was a very tedious and sort of imprecise process to try to track down the valuation of a lot of these watches, right? There's a lot of like
Totally.
searching on Google, looking at different historical listings. So I was thinking, this is dumb. I could just aggregate all this, calculate some metrics, and put them all on one page.
So we were starting to build that, and then because I didn't see anything like it, I saw a few, but they were really bad. And then I
Right.
stumbled across your site, and I was like, oh, this is exactly what I was trying to do. Because there isn't anything else like that. And I love that you were probably solving a problem for yourself, um,
Right.
which is epic. And then so one thing that's interesting, I was looking at trending up this month and trending down. It looks like all the non-name brands are trending up, like all the non-Rolexes, and all the Rolexes are trending down price-wise. Is there any other things you're
Yeah.
observing?
So right. So there's definitely been a big impact to the market because of this whole coronavirus situation. I think we've seen that a lot from the brands individually, but also just reseller sites, dealer sites, even sites like ours. As I said, we had been experiencing pretty consistent growth, but then the month of March, we were actually down a little bit. We were down about 25%
Oh,
in terms of our
interesting.
traffic. But recently we've started to recover more. And I think it's just sort of like our natural growth trajectory sort of being, hit a little bit by the whole coronavirus situation. But I think Rolex in particular is interesting because there's a huge bubble in the Rolex market that's been going on the last couple of years. Actually, sort of really unlucky, really coincided when I first started getting into watches was around 2017. Before that, you can look at Rolex Submariners, especially like, previous generation, like 16610 was going for like, $4 or $5,000 commonly. Now they're like,
One six
seven or
six
eight.
one zero.
Right. If you, we don't show all the data that we have, but like, I have data for this watch going back, to the early 2000s. And, at one point it was trading around three, four, $5,000.
Wow.
And now even the vintage ones, this is not quite vintage yet, but we've noticed a huge explosion in the vintage market in terms of prices. Just across the board, Rolex has been up, but particularly the new sports models, the Submariner, GMT Master, Daytona, those types of models have been consistently trading above retail the last maybe
Totally.
3 years or so, 2 to 3 years, right? So those are watches like, some of those watches I've had my eyes on too, but, I've been looking at the secondary market. Those are watches where, for example, like a Hulk, a
Oh
Rolex
man,
Submariner
yeah.
Hulk 16610 LV. That's a watch. I think it retails for around $9,000. But then, we've
Yeah.
seen it trade at 13, 14, $15,000.
So Definitely, we could do an episode about Rolexes, and I've gotten into it, even though I don't really like wearing watches. But there's something about Rolex and watches that's someone said it, and I thought it was really interesting, which it signifies a moment, and I thought that was kind of a cool way. There's definitely other people that take it in other perspectives, but I appreciated that, and so I just kind of I find it's like, all right, I want to learn how to fly, so maybe I can get a Rolex Air King. But what I want to talk with you today is some of the questions that you brought up, and I'm going to definitely
Right.
recommend everyone check out WatchCharts.com. There's a lot of cool things about this. Um, what's the general revenue range that you guys are getting? Whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Um, I guess I'll just say we're hoping to break six figures this year.
Six figures,
Yeah.
dude. Awesome. In 1 year, that's
Yeah.
great, man. I think some people, you're like six figures. That's great. Good for you guys, man.
Right. Thanks.
Most people, I mean, it took me, shit, I don't know how many years to actually even make a dollar. It takes a while though, so you got to find things that
Right.
you're interested in.
Right. For
Let's go
sure.
through your questions, man. Like, I think you sent me a
Yeah.
bunch of questions. Of all these questions, is there anything that, like, if we can get that solved in the next 20 minutes, would make this conversation super worth it?
Right. I think that actually there's a question I just thought of this morning that I didn't send to you yet, but sort of looking more into your background, it really seems like you're doing a lot of like focus on sort of marketing, right? Like, building, I guess, subscriber lists, right? Collecting emails, sending out messages, getting people engaged,
Yeah.
just sort of doing that type of thing, right? So I feel like one of the things we're not doing very well right now is sort of engaging the users that we have already, right? So we have a sign up page. We offer some benefits of signing up. You can enter our giveaways. That seems to be a big thing that people are really into. We do price alerts, so you can say, oh, if this watch pops up under X amount of dollars, we'll send you an email about it, so you can maybe look into it and buy it. Some other things like that. And we have a couple thousand registered users right now, but
Hun, how
I
many
don't
registered do you have?
a couple thousand, like 3,000 or so.
And then you have, and is that the same as your email list, basically?
Right. Yeah.
And then you
Right.
guys
So we
get,
have
and
we
you get
have
a
the
quarter
email
million,
addresses.
and you get a 250,000 visits a month.
Right.
Yeah, that's bad.
Right.
Which is good that
We're
you're
doing
recognizing it. That's good.
right. Yeah, we get about 40 to 50 registrations per day.
Okay, that's bad.
Right. So
But we'll solve that.
yeah.
We'll
So
solve
sort
it.
of
We'll solve it.
right. So sort of two parts to that question. Right. First, obviously, how do we increase that engagement? How do we increase the conversion? Um, and then second, of the people that we do have, how do we drive up their engagement as well? Right. How do we keep them interested? How do we keep them coming back to the site?
So, one, I don't know everything, but I'll share what I would do if I was running your business. So I think six figures is good, and the majority of that comes from affiliate fees. When
Right.
people like click to a watch and buy it off eBay or buy it off Bob's or whatever. So the
Right.
reason
Right.
that people I've observed don't prioritize or do a lot of email stuff is because you're not making a lot of money in it. Like from your email list, you make how much? Just ballpark.
I don't even measure
So
that. I wouldn't know.
that's exactly my point. And it's not a
Right.
told you so or anything. It's if you were making a lot of money from your email list, you'd probably have a lot more attention on it.
Right.
So
It's just even any traffic that's driven there, it's sort of indirect. Like the revenue that does come in is indirectly because of the traffic from the email.
So the things I want to talk about today, and then you can go do the action on them, and maybe we'll have a follow up. But I just love your site. I love that you guys are taking initiative. I love that you're in Austin as well, so represent that.
Yeah.
Um, that's generally what I found is if people aren't making money from their email list, they don't prioritize it. So my encouragement would be number one, how do we get your opt-ins to about 1% a month? So you should be targeting somewhere on the range of like 3,000 to 10,000 signups a month. So that's number one. Number two,
Okay.
I would do a weekly email. So are you guys doing a weekly email, or you're probably just emailing randomly, like when they have a
Yeah.
pricing?
Pretty randomly. It's usually once or twice a month.
Yeah. So I would create an email that you look forward to. And so you can experiment with a lot of different types of emails. Like, hey, here's like watches of the week. Hey, here's a deal of the week. Hey, here's like rare models. I think you guys can go through a lot of iterations of that to find out what people are responding to. And then what I would be interested in is I think with your site, it's actually going through it and figuring out what are the prime places for that someone to actually give you an email address. Because if you start seeing that you can get people engaging with your email list, and I think what I would specifically target is, especially for you guys, I think you guys need to be around a 30% open rate to have a successful email list. And the most important part about all this email list is one, it's a great new revenue line, but two, what did you tell me earlier? You said Google took away, you didn't say it that way, but I heard it. Google took away 25% of your customers. Now, this is a way that's like, if Uncle Google wants to be mad at you, You're like, I control
Right.
my own. That's why we make
Right.
80% of our business off of email. And that's why we
Right.
built sendfox.com. That's why we do all these things. So what I can do with you right now is let's go through a few of the things about the email list that you could do on your site. Does that sound good?
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
So like right now, I'll go incognito just in case there's anything else here. But right now, if I go to your site, I've seen the giveaway thing, which frankly, you don't even need to do. The one site the first site that came to mind, so there's this, right, which is a little slow. Um,
Right.
and then there's a giveaway, right? So let's open that. But the first site that came to mind that I thought of when I thought of you guys is kayak.com. And I know you're going to be like, that's not what you were expecting. But I think there's something
I,
similar. I know.
I've heard of it. I don't even know what it is. I've heard of it, but I don't.
So kayak is not a market. It's kind of a marketplace for travel in a sort. But what I think they do really well is that once you've searched for anything, they say, hey, would you like to subscribe to this alert for the future? So
Right.
they do that, and they prompt you a lot for their email because generally you're traveling this one time. And so if there's a way that they can actually capture your email address, maybe it won't do it incognito. But to me, this is actually, there it is. So once I search for
Mm.
something, it's like, hey, can we just sign you up for Rolex alerts? So I'm that person where if I came to your site, I just want to get Rolex alerts.
Right.
So if I just, exactly what I just did right there, let's come
I
back to
see.
your site and then start looking at a few places. So I think the two things that I want to encourage you to do today is let's just go through maybe like 3 to 5 places for the email. And then the second thing is I want you to set up a calendar where like every X day, every Monday maybe, you just have an email that automatically happens. Like, hey, this is the most, and generally what I like to do with my content and what I email out is I just look at what's already popular so I don't have to figure it out. So whatever is like the most viewed watch of the past 7 days, you could email that out. Or like
Mhm.
whatever is like trending, like whatever's grown the most in the past 7 days, you could email that out. I would try to just figure out what's already popular so you know people are going to be excited to see it.
Sure. Sure.
I think the giveaway as well is like, think about this. Your giveaway was a pop up here that took a while where I click a link,
Right.
where I
Right.
scroll down, and then I have to sign up to enter.
Right.
So, what I would recommend actually here, instead of doing all this other stuff, is you could use our software called kingsumo.com. It's completely free. And it basically, you sign up to enter, and then it gives you a bunch of buttons that you can have other people go and like, oh, hey, I'm getting a bunch of extra points by signing up. So if you go to kingsumo.com, you don't have to pay any money, and you could just embed it on that page. So I would probably do that because it generally like gets a lot more viral. So that's number one on this giveaway. The second thing is I don't even think you need to push a giveaway, frankly. I don't think you have to give away a watch. You can, but personally, I think right now it's like just do a pop up that's like, hey, get insane price alerts on the next watches. Perfect. I think that's a great one. You could use. There's a bunch of different free pop ups. There's sumo.com, which we run. It's free. You don't have to pay any money as well. But there's a bunch of other tools out there that are low cost or pretty affordable. And so I would just do a pop up that's like, hey, never miss another deal for watches. And then the second thing I would do is if I'm searching, just like we did, like if I search Rolex, you could have a pop-up that's like, hey, don't miss another Rolex alert. And then I give you my Rolex, and then you could probably tag me or put me in a Rolex list.
Mm.
And so you could send them kind of category-specific ones.
Right. I see.
So I wouldn't,
Um,
and then we could talk. I know you want to talk about your marketplace thing, but what I'm observing from you is the two thoughts, and I know you want to build a marketplace for watches. The two things I'm observing is I think you have 10 times more revenue and growth left in this core business. So I think you're jumping ahead
right.
too soon.
Right. That's exactly what I actually was thinking just the last couple of days.
That's a,
Is
you
I
know,
want to
I've
sort of
thought about this a lot where even for myself, I'm like, have I reached everyone I could possibly reach? And if not, how many are left?
right.
And I think it's a fallacy and a mistake that I've made a lot of times as an entrepreneur and I still make where I'm like, oh, this next thing's going to get bigger, but you have something working
Right.
amazingly. I think it's
Right.
like, how do we make this work better? And then how do we expand maybe a few revenue streams around the core business versus like, think about this now. You're going to start trying to run two businesses and is it you and a buddy?
It's me solo. I have a friend working with me.
Dude,
I'm
you're
the
the
solo
man.
founder.
Dude, you're the man. I love that you're doing. I'm so impressed.
Thanks.
And so think about this. This is something that we had the exact same problem. This is about 4 years ago. We had 3 sites we were working on, and it was just a few of us. And I asked my partner, I was like, there's only a few of us. Like, why are we like divided? What if we
Right.
all went double down on the big thing? And so I think you could double or triple or 10x the core one. And then the marketplace, the second part where I would discourage you from doing it right now is that are you that different than Bob's or Crown and Caliber or any of these other guys? Like, what's the other
Yeah.
one? Chrono 24. Are you that different?
We're so Bob's and Crown and Caliber, those two sites are sort of like dealer sites, right? They have their own inventory that they're selling. That's not really a marketplace, right? Chrono 24 is really the sort of standout flagship marketplace in the watch industry, right? Their traffic ranks like 6,000 or something like that. They've been around. They're established. They've been around since like the 2000s. So they're a very incredibly popular website, and really been partnering with a lot of dealers to sort of just get their content on the website. Um, I do think that there's a lot of things that we can do better than Chrono 24. um, and I feel like sort of the approach that I'm taking is rather than going after all these dealers to make it more like grassroots, make it more community driven, community focused, because that's sort of where I came from, right? I got into watches and I started going on, Reddit and Watch You Seek and all these
Yeah.
community driven sites. So sort of to, like improve the experience on that end rather than focusing on the dealer network.
So, yeah, I think you could do that and you could dominate. But imagine if you had an email list or of a million people that are like watch fans, and you were the dominant place that everyone just goes to. Then enabling that is a joke. So like think about Facebook. This is why Facebook's done so well. Is that it would have been very easy for them to launch like, and this is when I was working there. I was like, we got to do all these things, and the things that I wanted to do was like, let's launch events. Let's launch marketplace. Let's launch jobs. Let's launch. And Mark is like, no, we're just going to connect everyone. And then now that they've connected everyone,
Right.
they've launched a marketplace. They've launched all these other sections and categories. Groups is now super big, and all these other things because they have everyone. And so I think you need to get your foundation like locked in, and then I think it makes a lot more sense to go and explore these other things. The only other two other things I would suggest is that on these alerts on the watches, which is where I actually was really excited about your site, and like I'll give you a business suggestion and I'll give you some marketing suggestions. So the create alert thing. Look at this, dude. I know you're an engineer because look at this. If you look at this, I can tell you're an engineer. It's great for engineers, but this is not great for normal people. Like think about Kayak. It's like it should be watch 53, which is like, hey, get an alert for the Rolex email.
Okay.
And then I think you could push me to username and all that other stuff, but really you just want me to get an email address to start
Right.
to give me these alerts.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I would
that
do
was
that
one thing.
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that was one thing I was considering is like, should I distinguish between sort of a process where you just give me an email, like one button, really easy, or you actually go through this whole sign up process, right? So
Try
you're
both.
saying like,
Try both
try
and see
both.
what happens. I mean, personally, I think you want to do what is the least amount of friction to get people excited to hear from you.
Right.
And if I have to do a this page is confusing, right? Because I read left to right, and I'm reading left down, and then up, and then right down, which is a little bit confusing. But ultimately, you want my email address so that you can communicate with me and you can reduce your dependency on Uncle Google. So that's number one. And then
Right.
secondly, I think you need to build up your revenue from your email channel so that you're like, oh, okay, I'm not as dependent on this Google boss. The second thing I would recommend revenue-wise, so right now, 100% of your revenue, if I'm not mistaken, is affiliate.
Basically.
Okay, so that's a problem too because Weiss watches, Rolex watches go down, your revenue goes down.
Right.
But here's something I would actually pay for, and I think there's a lot of Rolex and watch collectors out there, and I'm a crappier one, I would say, but I would actually pay a monthly fee if you could help me find deals on the data. So that was what I was building with my buddy Mason, where I was like, yo, can we just build a thing that aggregates exactly what you've done? And I was going to do it. And so I bet you a lot of people would pay different amounts of money, and you just have to find, probably not me, probably the ones who will pay more. And you could email out your list and say, hey guys, I actually have some insane data that shows me when watches are it's on sale. I'm going to try to do it. It's going to be like for the year, it's $300. And I bet you'd be surprised that you could get like 100, 200, 1,000 people subscribed. Now you have a $30,000 or $100,000 revenue stream that is less dependent on the fluctuations of your Google traffic.
So is that just sort of like aggregating at the alerts? Like right now, the alerts are only at, the individual model level to say like, okay, we'll send you alerts for, all Rolexes or all, this brand or that brand for a fee. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
I think
suggesting?
what I'm suggesting ultimately is that you need to have a goal for your revenue. So it seems like you're going to hit 100,000 this year. what I would say is that how do you have 100,000 and there's some percentage of that that's not dependent on the Google traffic?
Right. Exactly. We want
And
to
so,
diversify the revenue stream for
so I
sure.
wouldn't try to diversify outside of like, let me create a marketplace because there's already a lot of that, and I don't think you're going to beat them. But I think you can experiment with a lot of different things. Can you get people to subscribe for certain data points? Can you get other watches, like watch sites, to get to buy sponsorships on your like? Hey, there's like a thing that you can just. You're an engineer, so you love building stuff. Just have a thing that's like, hey, if you want to get promoted here, it's $1,000 a month, which for them is probably stupid cheap. As well as if you have an email list, you could put them in their email list as well and be like, hey, I'll email out to my list about you. So
Right.
I think in summarizing this stuff, the number one, collect more emails. So experiment with a lot of ways to get people excited about that. Number two, have a consistent email. So build out your email. So every Tuesday, I do it every Wednesday for our OK Dork, but every Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, pick one day, you send an email, no matter what. And then number three, I would target a certain percentage, probably 20%, by the end of the year. Like, how do I get 20% of my revenue off of the Google drug train?
Right. Okay.
That's pretty much it, man. I
And so
think you
you
guys do
think
that,
that,
dude. You're on the right path. I mean, one, you're being a solo founder and all the things you've done, super impressive.
yeah. So you think that some subscription-based model is the way to go to diversify that revenue stream on WatchCharts?
Yeah. So I got about 4 minutes till I have to jump off to my next thing, and I'll be available on text, and we can sync up at another time.
For sure.
I love subscriptions and I hate subscriptions,
Right.
right? So subscriptions right now, when the economy's a little tighter, it's the first to go. But as a business owner, it's amazing because it's somewhat predictable and consistent. My encouragement is not to do just the subscriptions. I think that I would consider testing what are my different options. So I came up with the advertising one, or we discussed advertising, like direct advertising, subscriptions, and then I would see what other kind of angles make sense for you guys. Like, could you do your own watch?
We've thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
I would make a list of the 10 ones and then think about the way that we like to optimize a lot of this stuff is like, what's the impact? Like, how big can it be? How hard is it to do? And then how excited are we? And I
okay.
think we call it RICE. I don't know what the hell they call that. Like, it's something, basically, it's like impact, control, excitement. And it's a rating
Okay.
system that we use internally. But basically, I don't know. I like the acronym. So it's just like 3 columns, and you add it up, and then you sort it based on whatever has the most points. And then once a month, just kind of experiment with different things.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Any tips on sort of, I guess, engaging the existing, I guess, user base? Um, I guess how am I
No,
phrasing
I know
this?
what you're saying. What you're looking for is how do I talk to my audience and get them excited to hear from me? And I think that's all you have to do is that you have to be consistent and you have to be communicating with them in a way that they are looking forward to hearing from you. Like I was on Bob's Watches email list and Movado and I've been on all their email lists and I'm on a bunch of email lists. So the thing that I always recommend to everyone is go to your inbox now and look at which emails you love. So
Hmm.
like, does any come to mind
Um,
from a
maybe
friend or
like
from a company?
I'm subscribed to the time.com briefings. I think
Yeah.
that's
And what
what's
is
one
it
of the
about
better
them
ones.
that you love?
Just like it's sort of a snapshot on what's going on in the world.
Yeah. So I think for your audience, what does that mean?
What's sort of going on in the watch world.
Oh, that's freaking cool. Like even you telling me today, like, hey, do you know that Rolex ones, these are down? Or these watches have been up, or this, and you could automate that. Frankly, you could just say every week, like,
Right.
check the stats and send it. I generally, when I do emails or I do marketing, I do it manually first, always, to find what
Right.
works before I go. I think, especially engineers, want to go automate it instantly. But I would try a bunch of things out. Think about what I love to do with email is that what would excite me to get in my inbox and what am I excited to send out? Like when I have an email that I'm like, oh, I can't wait for people to receive it. That's kind of when you know you've gotten the right email. And then you can see with your open rates that'll tell you the truth whether people are opening or not.
Right. For sure.
So when are you gonna send your next email?
We actually sent one today, so
What did you guys
we'll
send
probably
out?
send one maybe next Monday or next Wednesday or something. I think like one a week is probably a pretty good schedule just to start out.
Yeah, and I think you can get way more. I think people get sophisticated way too early. Like, okay, well, we have a Rolex email. We can send a Rolex alert for this thing, and then we have this trigger, and it's just like, I think it's overcomplicated. I think most people don't need it for way longer than they actually realize.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing is just get that ball rolling, start actually making it a revenue stream. Because it's one of these things I've seen it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it where once you're going to start making money from the email list and maybe from another channel, you're like, okay, I'm going to grow the fuck out of this.
Yeah.
All right, man, I've got to get rocking. But I'll check back with you in a week. If not, I'll text you in a little bit. But yeah, you guys keep going, man. Don't stop. Don't
Yeah.
start doing the marketplace thing. I would even hide some of that stuff. I think that's kind of a problem with a lot of sites, and I'm noticing even with yours, like you're adding stuff. I think that one question just to kind of finish off is what are you subtracting?
Right. Yeah, we haven't really subtracted anything.
I know. Think about Apple. Like they're the famous ones. Like, oh, we don't have USB ports anymore. We're better than that. So, but I think
Right.
there's some truth to that. Like the more that you take away things, the more your audience and your customers are going to focus on the things that are better and the things that you and them hopefully want to do.
Right. And I mean, even some of the things that, we do have right now, even though we don't have very much, it's the navigation and the sort of UX, people have found it confusing. So we need to probably simplify some things.
Exactly, man. All right, I got to
Right.
rock, but watchcharts.com. Charles, keep hustling, respect, and then send me a Rolex when you become a multimillionaire.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
All
man.
right. Thanks, Noah.
Later, man.
See you.
Oh,